Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar on how to improve the energy efficiency of recreation facilities. My name is Calvin Leckelt. I'm the program lead for energy efficiency with the Municipal Climate Change Action Centre. And with me today is my colleague, Tori Santucci, a project coordinator with the MCCAC as well. Tori will be leading today's presentation, and we are also lucky to be joined by Bruce Knisley, a special projects manager with the City of Leduc, to present on one of the city's newest energy efficiency projects. So if you have any questions or comments during today's webinar, please enter them into the Q&A section, and they will be addressed at the end of the presentation. All attendee microphones will be on mute throughout the presentation, so we won't be able to hear any of your questions unless they are in the Q&A box. So before we get started, we would like to respectfully acknowledge that this presentation is being delivered in Treaty 6 territory. We acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries and whose presence continues to enrich our vibrant communities. For those who are not aware, the Municipal Climate Change Action Centre was established in 2009 and provides funding, technical assistance, and education to support Alberta municipalities, nonprofits, and schools in addressing climate change. The Municipal Climate Change Action Centre is a partnership between the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, Rural Municipalities of Alberta, and the Government of Alberta. And with that, I will pass it over to Tori to go through the agenda and the balance of the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Calvin, and thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. As the title of the webinar suggests, it's all about recreation facilities and how to make them more energy efficient. So some of the principles and best practices we're going to get into today, they can be applied to other facilities, not just rec centers. So without further ado, we'll just go into it. So we're going to be talking about why it's a good idea, first of all, to even consider recreation facilities as a retrofit target. And then we'll learn about how to go about actually performing some of these projects. We're going to talk about some funding that is available for implementing some of these energy efficiency projects and at rec facilities. So that's with the rec program. Just a high level overview about the eligibility, the funding, and the participation of the program. And then we're going to hear from Bruce about the Leduc Recreation Centre that the City of Leduc has been working on for several years now. And then there'll be time for questions once he's concluded his portion of the presentation. So let's get right into it. Why is it a good idea to retrofit recreation facilities? Well, rec facilities, speaking of arenas, ice rinks, and multiplexes, they are at the heart of Canadian municipalities, both large and small. And they're also among the highest energy consuming facilities in a municipality. If you ask any building operator who works at these facilities, he'll say that he or she will say that these day-to-day operations can be very expensive to maintain, and they emit significant amounts of greenhouse gas emissions. So those are several good reasons as to why this would be a great target for energy retrofits. And thankfully, there are many steps that you can take to boost an arena's energy efficiency or rec center in general, which will help reduce the costs of operation. So how to go about doing this? Well, we recommend starting with a scoping audit or an engineering study. So these are highly customized information reports that you can get from a contractor, and they're really important. They provide a lot of great detail. So things like a description of the building's energy usage profile. There's an analysis of project feasibility, and you'll have consumption data for different energy conservation measures that may benefit your facility. So by completing one of these audits or studies, building operators really have much more information needed to prioritize effective opportunities that can then reduce these really high energy costs and emissions in your rec facility. So which one do you need? Well, it depends on what information is available at the time. So just getting into the differences, a scoping audit is recommended really when you have a facility operator who's thinking about retrofits and requires assistance identifying which measures will yield the greatest energy and cost savings. It's a variety pack of different energy efficiency measures that you can then look to and prioritize which ones you want to go through first. So it's really the best place to start if you don't know where to start, really. And that's different from an engineering study. These are more comprehensive investment grade reports. So an engineering study would be recommended when you know what you want to retrofit, usually about between 2 to 3 different types of measures, and you wish to analyze the feasibility of these large scale capital intensive energy efficiency projects. So that's the difference. And luckily, scoping audits and engineering studies are funded up to 100% through the REC program, and we're going to get into that later on in the presentation. So the first step, so once you've gotten your scoping audit and your engineering study, you got the information you need, where do you begin? Well, you have to prioritize. You have to think of which ones you're wanting to improve first. So we recommend starting with the low to no cost retrofits. Those are the ones that'll be your quick wins. So things like adjustments in building operation, changes to occupant behavior, modifications to the building schedule. These types of things can be implemented relatively quickly and at low cost. So some examples at the bottom here include things like turning off your lights when they're not in use, especially during the after hours or when natural daylight is sufficient. Using sleep mode on computers rather than leaving them on 24/7 to reduce needless energy consumption. Things like introducing daylight cleaning during occupied building hours instead of overnight to reduce the length of time these energy systems are in operation, since cleaning will take place during the day, and performing regular maintenance of things like light bulbs, HVAC filters, refrigeration systems, just keeping up with your regular maintenance in the facility. And then maybe creating an awareness campaign in your community to help promote an energy efficiency culture. So all of these would be great ideas to start when you're considering some of these retrofits. Now you're probably wondering, okay, how do I go about funding all of these really expensive projects? Well, have no fear, the REC program is here. The Recreation Energy Conservation Program will provide a lot of different things. So the first is support to identify energy efficient opportunities. So that's talking about the scoping audits and the engineering studies to get the information you need and then go about implementing them. So we provide financial rebates to support these energy efficiency projects. And in return, these will help reduce energy use and greenhouse gas emissions of these facilities and save you some of those big energy costs moving forward, because every year you're going to get savings from implementing some of these things. So the focus of this program is on municipally owned rec facilities within the province of Alberta. So just like our other funding programs, they apply to Albertan municipalities with specifically high energy consuming systems. So that includes arenas, curling rinks, pools, dry sports centers, multiplexes, those types of facilities. If there is a facility that you're not sure of, whether or not it qualifies, feel free to submit an expression of interest on our website and we'll evaluate it on a case-by-case basis. So some of the eligible initiatives and retrofits, like I said, scoping audits and engineering studies there's available funding for those, as well as things like lighting, both interior and exterior, building automation systems, building envelope upgrades and HVAC systems, pumps, motors, CHP units, really anything. Like there's a lot of different things. By no means is this a comprehensive list. So there could be many other measures that could qualify as long as they are measures that will yield energy and GHG savings. So we'll look at those kind of on a case-by-case basis as they come in. All right, so how is everything funded? So scoping audits and engineering studies, they're funded up to 100% of costs. And we say up to because there's a maximum. So for dry sports centers, it's 8,000, arenas and pools, it's 10,000, and multiplexes, it's 12. And with engineering studies, because these are more comprehensive, obviously they're going to be more expensive. So we've got an incentive in place for a maximum of $20,000 for all recreation facility types. There's a star beside these because we kind of break up basically to encourage municipalities to move forward with implementation projects rather than just kind of sit on the information and not do anything. We've divided up the rebates for scoping audits and engineering studies into two parts. So the first part, you will receive 50% of the rebate you would expect. That'll be given out once we've received all of your completion documentation for your completed scoping audit and engineering study. So we've received the study, we reviewed it, we will then issue the payment then, and then the second payment would come once you have approval for an implementation project. So when you've got a signed offer letter in place, the project's been approved, we'll then pay off that remaining 50% of the rebate you would be expecting. So once you've got your scoping on engineering study, you can then move on to implementation, where we provide 75% of project costs up to a 1-year simple payback, kind of whichever comes first. All the projects we've seen have been given that full 75% so far. Couple caveats: the minimum project cost must be $10,000 or more. And projects with less than a 1-year simple payback wouldn't be eligible for this program just because there's enough of an incentive there to retrofit without funding. So municipalities can receive all of these rebates up to a maximum of $750,000. And that's over all the initiatives, the scoping audits, the engineering studies, and the implementation projects. And so there are some measures that can be applied for directly without requiring a scoping audit. And the reason for that is some of these have very predictable energy savings achieved by some of these energy conservation measures. So things like lighting, ice rink flood water deaerators, you may have heard of Real Ice, that's one, pump replacements, smart thermostats, rooftop units, space heating boilers. All of these are considered simplified measures. On our website, there's a list that kind of breaks down exactly what we classify as simplified measures. Some of these in particular will have certain specifications. So for example, heating boilers up to a certain BTU rating, we can then have that an application for a boiler such as that come in, and they wouldn't need a scoping audit to be completed first in order to have an application for that come in. So just a little bit of a way to streamline some of these measures and get participation going quicker. So this is the way the program works. Participation in the program would go as follows. So you start off, we always recommend reviewing the program guidebook and all the resources that we have on the REC program website. That includes, things like the terms and conditions. There's a whole bunch of documents on the right-hand side. So we really try to get municipalities to review those documents. And once you've got all of the knowledge that you need, you can then submit an expression of interest. So that's kind of a non-committal, very informal conversation that we would have with the municipality. We would just kind of talk a little bit more about your project and just get a sense of what you're looking to get out of the program, and that we could also talk about eligibility at that point as well. So once you've submitted your expression of interest, you've talked to us, you can then submit an application. So you'd get quotes from different contractors. If you're applying for a scoping audit or engineering study, you'd want to look at our program allies list, because we in order to be eligible, you have to go with one of those program allies for a scoping audit engineering study. So we recommend getting 3 quotes. You can get as many as you'd like, but just pick one and write down your choice on the application along with the supporting documents. Submit all of that to our program implementer. So our program implementer is Clear Result. We've partnered with them, and they handle all of our application intake as it comes in. So so at that point, after stage 3, you'd basically be talking to Clear Result from there on out, and they'd be guiding you through the process and providing updates as things move through the review. So number 4 is when you'll get a signed offer letter. That basically locks in your funding. You can go ahead and get started on your project, whether it's a scoping audit engineering study or an energy project itself. And then once you've completed it, submit your documentation back to us. We will review it, and then you can receive your funding and continue on saving energy and money. So please visit mccac.ca for full program details. This was a very high-level review, so there may be some important details that you'll want to read on the website. So participation so far, we've had this program running since about March of 2019. So more than a year after launch, there are now 61 unique municipalities that have taken advantage of the REC program to date. Some of them completing 69 audit or study projects that have either been completed or they're nearing completion, and 22 implementation projects that were approved. They're either underway or will be completed. So as time goes on, municipalities will take their learnings from the audit and study and then pursue those implementation projects, which will result in more and more GHG emissions reduced. So we're expecting that implementation project number to increase, as well as the GHG numbers. So we're almost at 3,000 now, based on those pending 22 implementation projects. So with that, I will turn it over to Bruce to talk about his the City of Leduc's Recreation Centre and some of the work that they've been doing. And we'll look at that as an example of how some of the best practices we've discussed can then be applied to projects at a recreation facility. So I will guide the slides, and Bruce, if you wouldn't mind turning on your mic, and you can begin.
Okay, thank you very much, Tori. You can hear me, I trust?
I can hear you, yep.
All right, so welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is a bit new for me, so you'll have to bear with me a little bit. Wanted to talk about our Leduc Recreation Centre and a bit about the history and how we've moved the facility along from the time it was built all the way through to when most recently and the completion of our lighting upgrade. So on the next slide is a brief agenda, if you will. A little bit about the City of Leduc and our environmental sustainability. We do have a plan that we're trying to work towards. Some history about the Recreation Centre. There was a significant expansion back in 2009, which we'll talk about briefly, and some of the energy upgrades. A little bit about the REC program and some of the things it's done for us there. I'll show you some of the savings that we're anticipating, lessons learned, and kind of where we're at, and then we'll all at the end, as was mentioned earlier, have an opportunity to answer some questions. So the next slide, the City of Leduc's environmental sustainability plan is about taking action and on climate change and mitigating and implementing and innovative energy conservation and generation solutions in the building portfolio. What a mouthful. At the end of the day, it's about being more fiscally responsible, improving the space for the occupants and the building, and reducing the carbon footprint. So we'll move on to the next slide. And a little bit about the history of the Leduc Recreation Centre. The building was originally built in 1978, which consisted of a 25-meter lane pool. It had a large ice rink and some common areas for rentals and programs. In 1986, the curling club was added, which was had a 2-story viewing area and 8 sheets of curling ice. In 2004, an addition of a leisure pool with the expansion of mechanical space and upgrades to some of the amenities took place. In 2009 was the biggie when we added twin ice rinks, twin field houses, fitness area, a running track, some lease space for basically restaurants, some physiotherapy and retail space. The Boys and Girls Club came into our facility, outreach school space. We'd have a training kitchen, child minding, meeting spaces, and bottom line is we added about additional 2/3 to that building. So the next slide, we'll talk about why we did what we did. So the rec center itself, there was a needs assessment completed, and it identified some amenities that things were the community felt we were short of. Things like shortage of ice, no availability of field houses, no fitness area, no track. So at the end of the day, the building was tripled in size. With, again, the fitness, the running track, etc. All of those things were identified as community demand for recreation amenities. And one of the things, and we'll talk about this just a little bit further down here, but it gave us an opportunity to market nationally. And again, this is based on the energy efficiency components. On the next slide, we'll start talking about some of the things that were actually built into this significant expansion and why. So council prioritized these environmental initiatives and has all along, and I'll preface this by saying none of our energy efficiency programs in any of our buildings would be moving forward unless we had the support of our council. Our council is very supportive of all of these types of initiatives and of course helps contribute with the funding. So some of the things that we actually put into that building in the 2009 expansion were waterless urinals, relatively energy efficient lighting at the time. They're not the LEDs, but they were energy efficient at the time, the T5 high bays, things like that. We built in some ice plant heat recovery. So we were using it to melt snow at our front entrance and our front sidewalks. We used it to melt the ice that's coming off of the ice rinks from when the Zambonis dump, so the ice melt pits. We preheated some of the water for domestic use and for some in-floor heating. And again, all of this was waste heat that was captured and designed into that initial program. So in the next slide, we did some other things from 2009 to 2017, again, with a view towards the building itself and you know, how do we continue to enhance it and make it more energy efficient. So back in about 2009, we added insulation to the roof of the original pool. I believe the original R value was like an R4. We bumped that up to about an R20, again, saving some of that energy. We installed some heat recovery units on the original ice plant for dehumidification, again, utilizing some waste heat, improving the conditions, improving the fogging on the glass, and that sort of thing. We enhanced building automation components. I've been in the building operations business probably way too long, but at the end of the day, I've come to learn that building automation systems do save us a significant amount of energy by making those adjustments and taking control of the building when there isn't an operator handy. One of our pride and joys is that, and you can see it in the picture in the corner, we put on a 1.14 megawatt solar system on that building, consisting of 3,622 modules, covers about 78,000 square feet, and it produces about 15% of our power requirements for that facility. Next slide. So from 2018 to 2020, we continued on. We replaced the original ice plant, which was being built in 1980, and so it was like 35-ish years old. Technology wasn't quite where it is these days, and the unit was well past its life cycle anyway, so we replaced it with an ice plant that gave us a little bit higher energy efficiency, a little bit better operating characteristics. We replaced the Twin Arena cooling tower with an adiabatic fluid cooler to reduce our water and electricity consumption. This one alone on the water on the saved about $20,000 in this last year that we were actually able to measure. We completed energy audits throughout all of our city buildings. So this would be the engineering level that was talked about before, which again gives us all of the detail about you know, how much, what needs to be done, how much can be saved, and it actually, our program came along with some guarantees that we would actually hit the targets that were being proposed. We did our LED lighting retrofit program that we're just wrapping up now and completing up some of the final paperwork, that sort of thing, with partially funded through the REC program. And then we also did some recommissioning of building automation systems. Again, that fine tuning that was mentioned before, occupancy schedules, and just making sure the building's still functioning the way it was intended. In the next slide, I just wanted to show you graphically how our consumption changed with the Leduc Rec Centre and when we put on the solar panels. The solar panels themselves were installed and connected actually August the 8th of 2016. So you can see a small drop at the end of that year, but in the subsequent years, you can actually see a significant decrease in our consumption. Again, we're producing it on site. We're still consuming it, but we're producing it ourselves. So the REC program itself and the lighting retrofit. So having completed the energy audit for our facilities, the REC program was sort of a natural fit. We were one step ahead of the offering that came out to help fund it, but it's something we felt was important, and we were starting down that path on our own anyway. So that gave us a good basis to be able to move into the implementation stage very early. In fact, I believe we're REC program 001. The lighting retrofit offered a reduction in operating costs and, of course, carbon footprint. The project was a fit for the City of Leduc Environmental Sustainability Plan. With the audit being completed by MCW Custom Energy Solutions, our audit identified the payback periods, and the city and MCW Custom Energy Solutions moved into an energy performance contract, which again came with some guarantees of actual savings. The city was able to take advantage of the REC program rebate, basically to reduce our payback periods. We were initially with our program, and this is the entire program for all of the city, we were looking at about a 10-year payback overall. Now, with all of the things that we're got in there and contemplated that we're doing, we're actually down to about 4.5 years. So the next slide is just a picture of our performance arena with the new LED lighting in it. The savings on the program itself, basically $900,000 program. We've completed it now. As I said, we're just wrapping up the final pieces and waiting for a rebate check. The project itself improves the LRC's indoor and outdoor spaces, because we did parking lots as well. And all of that while, again, reducing our energy consumption and saving some money on utility costs. Energy lighting fixtures in the LRC were all upgraded, every fixture to an LED equivalent. In some spaces, lighting was even removed and redesigned, if you will. One of the areas, and we'll talk just a little bit later on, but the idea of the improvement in the overall lighting levels doesn't mean you have to go fixture for fixture. We were able to take out whole rows of fixtures, and by changing them up to an LED, save that money and etc. So our projected annual savings cost just from the lighting retrofit is just under $68,000. 593 tons of CO2 is projected in our reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. This is our curling rink. So throughout the building, not just the curling rink, but there was 400 new arena LED fixtures installed. So keeping in mind that we have 2 performance arenas, we have the curling rink, we have the Sobeys arena, which is the performance one that I showed you earlier, and then all of our field houses and that. So those were very significant. From the twin ice arenas alone, we removed 48 fixtures. which I mentioned earlier. And we're seeing a 50% reduction in lighting and electrical load in the arenas, and with no complaints, by the way. We had 479 hallway troffer light fixtures that were upgraded. We had 50% cumulative reduction in electrical load from all linear fixture retrofits. And again, for any of you that know rec centers, there can be lots of them. So some of the lessons that we've learned, we were going into this, the energy program, as I said, we were started before the rec program actually came out, but we had a good understanding of energy retrofit projects from previous experience. Some of us have been working on energy retrofits since back in the 1980s, so we do have a bit of an understanding, and we were moving forward. The program itself helped confirm the direction the city was taking with respect to the energy project. We were continuing down the correct path. The project helped to move the City of Leduc further down the road with respect to our environmental sustainability plan. We've been looking at energy efficiency and carbon reductions and things like that. And of all of the initiatives that were potentially identified, our ESCO program, our energy audit and subsequent update of fixtures and so on, actually ranked very, very high in projects as far as the best outcomes. So at the end of the day, I believe municipalities should invest and pursue opportunities provided through MCCAC as it means to move forward for their own environmental plans. So some of the next steps for us, and we've already taken a few. So the City of Leduc is currently working to enhance the roof structure of the original ice rink at the Leduc Rec Centre. We do have to replace the roof here shortly, as in next year, but we're enhancing it such that we can actually accommodate more insulation and have the capacity to support solar panels on the roof as well. We have received approval through the MCCAC for a real ice program at the rec center, and I believe actually at our Alexander Arena as well. The City of Leduc has received approval from the MCCAC to go forward, and we're receiving a grant for the solar system on the expansion that we're doing on our protective services building. Continuing on with some of the next steps, the City of Leduc will help, with the help of the MCCA, has installed solar panels on our newly constructed eco station. That was completed just about 5 or 6 months ago, I believe. We've been able to, again, with the assistance of the program, purchase a Chevy Volt, and you'll see our mayor happily standing beside our new Chevy Volt. Another project that we did, and we did get some grant funding, but not through this particular program. The City of Leduc also completed a 630,000 kilowatt solar project on our operations building, which is in the background of this picture with the Chevy Volt in 2016, effectively bringing that facility to net zero electrically. So we're producing as much electricity off the roof as we use over the course of a year. Next steps, again, we're always open to new energy efficiency projects. It's a bit of a pet peeve of mine, and we have a number of other folks in our organization that are also trying to pursue these on an ongoing basis. And I think energy efficiency is worth considering for any municipality that has the same goals as we do for their environmental sustainability. So, bringing more fiscal responsibility, improve space for the occupants, and reduce the carbon footprint. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Bruce. So now I guess we'll open it up to any questions that anyone has. I believe Calvin was taking a look at some of them that had come in so far. Calvin, did you want to speak to any of those?
Yeah, for sure. We'll give a little bit of time for some more to come through. I've gone ahead and answered a couple of the quite easy questions, but I'll just read them out for everyone's benefit. So Donald asks, are similar efficiency gains available for other high energy consuming recreational facilities like swimming pools? Would funding be available to support investing in energy efficiency in swimming pools? And short answer is yes. Municipally owned pools in Alberta are certainly eligible to participate in the REC program. Then Ali goes on to ask, is this funding program only for Alberta municipalities? And yes, that is correct. There are some caveats that some community-related organizations could participate, but the facility that community-related or organization or nonprofit operates out of would need to be municipally owned, and there's some other caveats associated with that approach, but typically they are eligible, and we do evaluate them on a case-by-case basis. Next question, next two I believe are for Bruce. Ali writes again, what were the financials like for the solar PV system, and did you get any funding for this? And I believe his question is specific to the PV system on the LRC.
Yes, we were actually able to get about 1/3 of our funding for that project came through the MCCEC, which was some funding that was set aside from the major emitters. It was a program that actually ended about a month and a half after we were able to sign in. So it's actually no longer available, but we were able to receive about 1/3 of the funding that we had to commit to that.
Great. Next one is for Bruce as well. Is the Leduc case study available as a PDF? Now, I'm not sure if that's specific to the LRC or any of the other work, but can you speak to that at all, Bruce?
No one has ever sat down and actually completed a full case study. This is the extent of it. I don't know if you're going to make these slides available or not.
Yeah, the intent is to post this recording in some fashion. That's still something we'll need to figure out the details about. But yeah, so Andre, I believe there will be something available for you. Next question is from Jeff. Is MCCAC's funding from the province? Really quick, I can answer that. Yes, it is from the province. Next question is from Cassie. Can you speak a little bit more about the performance guarantee approach, why you went with that direction, what the procurement process was like for it, and so on? And sorry, that's for you, Bruce. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with the terminology of an ESCO, an Energy Performance Agreement. Those are quite commonly used. My original familiarity with those came through schools, where it's a program that had been used for a number of years. There are a number of vendors out there. We did put out an RFP requesting, commitments on behalf of various vendors. Again, I don't have a list of all of them off the top of my head, but you're asking for a performance level, a finance level audit, again, which the fellas were speaking earlier about the engineering levels. And from there, I mean, I could, if you want to reach out to me, I can send you a copy of the one we had put out. It was all posted on the Alberta Purchasing Connection, if that helps at all.
Yeah, for sure. Cassie, if you want to reach out to us, we can get you in touch with Bruce. Not a problem with that. A couple more questions coming in, just need to publish them. So Colleen writes, Bruce, if you had your choice in energy efficiency methods to implement, what would you implement first?
I think that was mentioned earlier, some of the low-hanging fruit is always a good place to start. I do like, though, personally, and these are some of the things that you'll find when if you actually go through the auditing process with a energy performance company. It does give you the opportunity to leverage the payback from some of that low-hanging fruit and utilize their expertise and engineering skills to do some of the less lucrative items, but they'll actually save you money over time in maintenance.
Great. Questions are starting to taper off here. Jeff asks, have any of the 60+ projects tapped into federal funding? And that's a question, I believe, for the MCCAC. And I can speak to that as well. We funded roughly 90 or so, 95 rec projects, so it's a little bit more than 60. And as far as I know, the majority of those have not tapped into any federal funding because the majority of those projects at this time are audits and studies, as you saw from some of the statistics that Tori shared. So about 69, 70 or so of those projects are scoping audits and engineering studies, which the MCCAC will actually fund to up to 100%. So there really wasn't much need to leverage other funding for those projects. And again, with the REC program funding such a high portion of the costs, as far as I know, as far as I know, no other municipalities have been looking into federal funding for the remainder of those costs. So we'll give it a minute or two if any other last questions come in. But thanks for everyone for participating. If you want to learn more about any of the work that we do and any of the other programs that we offer, feel free to check out our website. It's mccac.ca. We have programs for solar PV, municipal energy managers, electric vehicles, obviously efficiency in rec centers, as we talked about today, a whole host of things. If you'd like to keep in touch with the work that we are doing, feel free to follow us on any of the 3 platforms that are shown on your screen, either Twitter, LinkedIn, or Facebook. One last question came in. Just wondering if Leduc has installed or is considering combined heat and power.
We did actually. We initially talked about combined heat power on the basis of utilizing the pool as our heat sink. In fact, we looked at it a number of times. The first time that we looked at it, it really wasn't cost effective for us. Kind of led us down the path of spending our money on the solar instead, which was a better payback than the other way. We did look at it as an option again as part of this energy audit. We did determine at the end of the day that because of the location of the pool versus where the units were being supplied from, et cetera, it wasn't as feasible as what it what it appeared to be. So on the surface, so we've abandoned that idea for the time being.
Great, and I don't see any other new comments or questions coming in. So this will be our last question. Colleen asks, you talked about national marketing. How important is that to the City of Leduc?
Oh, thank you for reminding me. I didn't elaborate on that, did I? What that does is it gives us, we have folks that go down to different areas, a lot in Ottawa and that sort of thing, where they have national organizations looking to host events in various communities. And by being able to promote our facility as a green facility, it makes a tremendous amount of difference, as I understand it. I'm not in that end of the world, but if you have two organizations, two municipalities, and one has a whole bunch of green initiatives that international organization can help promote and play on, it makes it more attractive for them to want to host in your community versus some other community that hasn't done any of those sorts of things.
Great. Yeah, there aren't any more questions coming in. So for everyone else still on the line, if there are other questions, either for us or Bruce, feel free to get in touch. And thank you for joining our webinar today. And special thanks to Bruce for all of his insights and all of the great work that the City of Leduc is doing.
All right, so with that, I think we'll end the live event. Thanks again for everyone for joining. Till next time.
Thank you.